of seeing aggro strategies in Standard? Sick of two-card casual combos in Commander? Are you one of those who always commented, but MTG takes no skill whenever you have the chance? Do you like slapping your opponent with a big flappy fish? And fear not, this game is for you. Today we are diving into one of the bluest formats you can play in MTG of all time, DanDan. Hello, it's me, it's CGB, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about DanDan. The DanDan format, also known as Forgetful Fish, is an interesting twist on the traditional Magic the Gathering gameplay experience. Unlike most formats where two players battle each other with their own decks, DanDan is played with a single shared 80-card deck between two players. This format is named after the signature creature DanDan, a 4/1 fish with the island home ability, meaning it can only attack if the opponent controls an island, and it is destroyed if you control no islands. The deck has 10 copies of DanDan, 8 memory lapses, 4 copies of accumulated knowledge, and 2 copies of each of the other cards in the deck, many of which manipulate the top of the single library in some way. Forgetful Fish plays out like a standard game, but it has its own rules. Firstly, the two players share a library and a graveyard placed between them so that players can easily reach them. The standard mulligan still applies, but any time a starting hand of 7 cards does not contain 2 or more land cards or does contain 6 or more, that player may reveal those cards and take a free mulligan without having to put an additional card on the bottom of the library when finally deciding to keep a hand. Each player starts the game with 20 life, but since they will only lose life in increments of 4 because DanDan is a 4/1 creature and it's the only damage source in the deck, a starting life total is usually represented by 5 counters, or tracked on a single 6-sided die. Each time a DanDan deals its 4 damage to a player, he or she loses 1 counter, or 1 number off the die. The strategies of the game can be a bit nuanced if you haven't tried it before. Since both players draw from the same deck, control of the top of the library is key. Cards like Brainstorm and Memory Lapse allow you to manipulate what you and your opponent will draw, so make sure to take the best cards for yourself and give your opponent every land you can spare while making sure you have enough lands yourself. But Memory Lapse actually has a much more important role to play. Memory Lapse places the card back on top of the shared library, so if you counter a DanDan, you will get the next draw step and effectively steal that DanDan. That is, unless your opponent has one of the many card draw spells in the deck, in which case they can redraw the DanDan. Unless, of course, you also have a card draw spell and you can redraw the DanDan before your opponent redraws the DanDan. Do you see how this can get complicated? Speaking of dealing with Forgetful Fish, there are a few removal options in the deck. Because of DanDan's island home ability, the key to removing a DanDan usually involves 2 strategies. The first one is to make it so your opponent does not control an island with cards like Vision Charm, which changes all islands into another mana type, effectively acting as a board wipe that kills all DanDans. Another method is to change the text of the DanDan to have it sacrificed if its controller does not have another basic land type. This is where cards like Crystal Spray and Mind Bend come in. Both cards can change the text in DanDan such that it reads, "When you control no mountains, sacrifice DanDan." Since there are only islands in the deck, it will kill the DanDans. Of course, a huge component of any blue deck is card advantage, which makes cards like Accumulated Knowledge just as important as DanDan's. Unless you are running out of cards, you should always wait until there's at least 1 Accumulated Knowledge in the graveyard before casting 1 from hand, maximizing your draws. But how do you go about getting another player to play Accumulated Knowledge so that they don't just respond with Accumulated Knowledge or get back an Accumulated Knowledge casting the larger Accumulated Knowledge than your Accumulated Knowledge? Guys, this isn't just playing Burn to the Face. Now you have a basic understanding of the deck and what you are trying to achieve, so let's dive into its history. The origins of DanDan were dated way back to the spring of 1996. Nick Floyd, an MTG enthusiast, left his cards at home when he was visiting his cousin, but ended up buying a bunch of packs and a starter deck. Unfortunately, there weren't enough cards and lands to make 2 complete decks, so Nick decided to shuffle all the available cards into 1 shared deck. Both DanDan and Memory Lapse were in the deck, and when Nick cast Memory Lapse on his cousin's spell, he realized that he would be drawing that spell on his turn. This little trick inspired Nick to create the DanDan deck, which he brought to the 1997 US Nationals to share with others. Over the years, Nick kept refining the deck by adding cards like diminishing returns to add more turns to the game, making it both more fun and skillful. The game variant started gaining traction in the Magic community, and in 2016 it became known as the Forgetful Fish after the movie Finding Dory came out. In 2023, Ristic Studies made a YouTube video about the DanDan format that went viral and introduced it to a much larger audience, including me, CGB. I encourage you to check out Sam's video on his channel. So what makes DanDan so special? For starters, it's cheap. With a single 80-card deck shared between players, the cost is significantly less than building two separate competitive decks. DanDan also offers a game-within-a-game experience that most MTG formats don't have. The shared deck and graveyard create a dynamic environment where every play can affect the game massively. It's a format that demands skill and strategy, rewarding players who can think 3 steps ahead. What I love about DanDan is that it can leave you feeling like the smartest player in the room and the dumbest player in the room in just a few turn cycles. It honestly is the closest that MTG has ever felt to chess to me, as both players have very similar pieces, and it's all about using them in the right way. And there you have it. That is a brief overview of the DanDan format. If you enjoy playing this format or want to try out the high skill cap experience for the first time, I will be hosting a Forgetful Fish qualifier event on Friday and Saturday of MagicCon in Chicago, February 21st through 23rd. Come find me slapping away with a fish, and remember, you're cool.